Greetings. My name is Jeremiah Fick, and I want to share with you my personal creed. What is the most admirable creature on God's green earth? Why, it's the bee!
Ever feel like you're playing a game and watching some deep, beautiful, impactful cutscene, only to have your next actions be mindlessly shooting some bad guys? This is known as a ludonarrative dissonance, a fancy way of saying the story evoked by the gameplay does not match the story told by the cutscenes and rhetoric of a game. Typically, this is viewed negatively, as certain games doing this can ruin players' immersion and their sense of being in the world, and the stakes that are involved in their actions in the world. However, it doesn't have to be that way. It can really affect how a player plays the game and how the player feels in the reality by creating this dissonance from the game world. Firstly, it's important to note that ludonarrative dissonance is not strictly bad, even if done poorly. For example, in the Borderlands series, more specifically Borderlands 2, there's a large example of this in how the game responds to the player after they die. The game respawns the player at a Hyperion-owned New U station, which not only acknowledges their failure, but often mocks the player for dying as well.
Hyperion hopes your death was a learning experience, but wouldn't mind if you made the same mistake a few more times just to be sure.
This is a very large example, because Hyperion is the company that is attempting to kill you permanently in this game. And in this game, there is a major character from the first game who dies permanently, despite using the same system to respawn in the first game. However, due to the nature of this game, this dissonance is easily forgiven, because Borderlands as a whole is intended to be a humorous game, and this form of dissonance can be amusing, in a sense. It's also important to understand what the opposite is: ludonarrative consistency. As a simple example, take Dark Souls. In the Dark Souls world, the special race that the player is, undead, die, and when they die, their body, in the last known state, is returned to the last bonfire they rested at, just as the player does. Even if the player did not exist in this world, the rules would be consistent and always stay the same as when you do join them. To understand this concept further, we'll take a few examples of what I would argue are poorly done ludonarrative dissonance. A simple one is in Rise of the Tomb Raider. In the game, the protagonist, Lara Croft, is seen as shooting many people, doing incredible jumps and flips and tricks, and generally being more than capable of handling herself in any situation. However, in many cutscenes of the game and dialogues, she's seen by herself and others as weak and needing to prove herself to somebody.
Jonah, we've been through so much together. You know there's more out there. This could be real.
I don't care if it's real. I've lost too many friends. I don't want to lose you too.
This is a simple example, as the way that a player controls Lara is as a badass, nigh-invincible warrior, while the game itself and its storytelling portrays her as this stereotypical weak woman, which is a whole different can of worms. A more complex example of poorly done dissonance is in Bioshock Infinite. Throughout this entire game, the player has many choices presented to them. At the start, who to throw the ball at, the interracial couple or the announcer, and later, to choose the bird or the cage pin for Elizabeth at the beach. But the core gameplay, the challenges, enemies, and obstacles, are all solved by one simple method: shooting. The game attempts to tell this grand tale with many different sides, choices, dimension-traveling plot twists, and yet the only part that a player really gets to participate in is the mindless shooting of anyone outlined in red. In terms of gameplay, this creates a large disconnect from the world of the game, and that any of the player's actions have any real consequences, as well as creating this weird rhetorical argument that all moral issues should pass the player by as the player aims to complete their goal. It doesn't even approach the ends justify the means, because the player only pushes forward for their own goals, ignoring any and all moral dilemmas presented to them, such as the inherent racism in Colombia, isolationism, the issues of their religion, etc. Now, here are some examples of games that present this dissonance in a way that is not only intentional by the designers, but well done and meant to enhance the way the game is played. Firstly, the world's most popular demo, PT, purposefully puts the player into a world that extends a set of rules. You're in a dark hallway that infinitely loops, and you get the feeling that something is following you, triggered by various jump scares and other spooky events. However, As the game progresses, the game starts to break its own rules. For example, there's a collectible on the pause menu of the game. There are fake glitches and errors that look like screen tearing, and to even a game crash that is completely fake that automatically restarts the game for you without actually restarting your game. The way PT does this is by making the player doubt their own level of sanity and safety by seemingly interacting with the world outside of the game, creating that disconnect, that dissonance from the world of their game that makes the player more concerned about their own world than the one that's in the game. Finally, the GTA series as a whole. In most recent GTA games, most of the characters the player gets to control are portrayed as mostly normal people. They have relationships, jobs occasionally, some sort of moral compass, and are generally not how you use them in-game as murderous psychopaths capable of single-handedly destroying an entire police force and stealing jets from military bases. Like Borderlands, this dissonance is not necessarily harmful to the game. It's meant to be entertaining. A sandbox game that gives the player the ability to commit crimes that they could in real life, but no real penalties, no one is hurt. However, GTA 5 presents an interesting departure from this particular formula in the form of Trevor. Trevor is a character that can be played as, that acts like the player might control him to in any situation portrayed by the game. In cutscenes, he is seen committing murders, stealing things, and doing other morally bad things.
Then he kind of got a little angry, so I admit, I kind of got a little angry.
Did you kill him?
What kind of fucking animal do you take me for? No, I didn't kill him.
Oh, fuck.
But I did kidnap his wife.
Oh, no!
This sort of forces a player back into the form of ludonarrative consistency. The game sort of uses this as a rhetorical tool. By having the player's actions be more consistent with a character they're controlling as told by the game, they're forced to reflect on how they act in the game and think about their in-world crimes. Overall, ludonarrative dissonance is a powerful tool, but at the end of the day, it is only a tool. Used properly, it can enhance a player's experience and their gameplay to create a more visceral or enjoyable experience. But doing it poorly can detract from the game as a whole and ruin major plot points and even messages that are meant to be sent by the developers.